Hello, everyone. A very lovely evening to all of you. Welcome back to yet another very interesting episode of Big Bull Ki Pathshala. Like every session that we have done in the past year has an agenda. This particular session also has an agenda. The agenda are the upcoming law entrances, that is CLAT, ALET, and many others, right? So in this particular session, we will be focusing entirely on the CLAT exam, on the ALET exam, and of course the most important section of the exam, that is the GK and the current affairs section. So how should you prepare about this particular section? What all things you should keep in mind? What are the basic tips and tricks? And what should be your almost 2 month preparation strategy for this particular section is something that will be our motto for today's session. The CLAT exam is set to take place on 3rd of December. The registrations are already live for the exam, and the last date for you to register will be 3rd of November. The exam is set to take place on 3rd of December. Similarly, for the the ALET exam is set to take place on 10th of December, and the last date of registration is 13th of November. So if you have not as yet registered yourself for the exam, now is the right time. Go ahead and register yourself. We are almost 2 months away from the exam. So you have ample of time for preparations. So make sure, and if you're somebody who has already registered, this session will be very fruitful for you to understand the specimen and the basic points about the current affairs of GK section. Before I go ahead and introduce our guest for the evening, the very special guest for the evening, I would want to share the latest notifications that have come out this particular week. So DU, that is University of Delhi, has recently given the notifications regarding their 5-year integrated course, that is BA LLB and BBA LLB honors. So for the admissions for the academic year 2023 and 24, the University of Delhi is going to consider your CLAT 23 scores. So if you're somebody who appeared for the CLAT last year, and you feel that you are fulfilling the minimum eligibility for this particular course, make sure that you register yourself on the official website of University of Delhi. They have not as yet given a last date of registration, but it should be released soon. So as of now, make sure that you go and register yourself ahead. Now let's come back to our session. Let me introduce the very esteemed guest for the evening, Mr. Maneesh Mittal, who has an incredible experience of 5+ years of teaching students with the current affairs of GK section. Hello, sir. Good evening. Welcome to the session.
Good evening, ma'am.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm fine, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here and to enlighten the students who will be joining the session today.
My pleasure, ma'am.
Also, at the same time, I want to ask you all if you people have any questions, any queries about the GK and the current affairs sections of the law entrances, that is CLAT and ALET, make sure that you put it in the comment section and we'll be more than happy to answer it for you. However, we'll try to cover all the very important topics or the important areas of the exam. Still, if you have any questions, any queries, if you're an aspirant for the next year, even that works. Please make sure that you put your doubts, your queries in the comment section. So, sir, before we begin, let's talk about the weightage of this particular section, that is current affairs and general knowledge in the CLAT exam and the ALET exam. Please tell us about that.
So, in this CLAT exam, till last year, the pattern used to be a little bit different. So until last year, there were a total of 150 questions in the exam, and GK used to command about 1/4 of the total weightage. So there was no specific number of questions that were asked every year. They ranged somewhere between 35 to 40. So that gives us an idea that they were 1/4 of weightage for this section. This year, what they have done is they have reduced the number of total questions from 150 to 120.
Right.
But the weightage is the same.
Okay.
So,
Right.
as the Consortium of National Law Universities has already provided on their website, the range of questions out of 120 is going to be somewhere between 28 and 32 for the GK section. So 1/4 of weightage this section carries in the exam. And I think if you combine this section with legal reasoning, that carries almost half of the weightage of this exam.
Right. So overall, we can say that current affairs and GK is a very vital part of the exam. And I believe even legal reasoning has the same kind of weightage for the exam. So both of these sections are actually very, very important from the exam point of view, right?
Right, ma'am. Absolutely.
Right. So now, sir, since you are coming across students on a very regular basis, you have been interacting with them, you've been teaching them in the past 5 years. So at this point in time, when we are around almost 2 months away from the exam, what are the common challenges that are faced by the aspirants? What are the difficulties that they go through?
Right. So at this point of time, just about 2 months before the exam, the most common problem I am seeing the students face is that they think that the time is too less to cover too much of the syllabus,
Right.
which to a certain extent is true, because we always say that in a CLAT exam, at least 1 year of current affairs is something that is a must for every student to cover. But that does not, of course, mean that it cannot be done in these 2 months. It is, of course, doable only if one knows how to do the smart work instead of just, reading about anything and everything, which, of course, I'll be talking about in a few minutes. So I think the major concern is how to cover the entire syllabus for GK in this short span of time. This is the major problem that the students are facing right now.
Right, right. So, sir, according to you, what should be the outlook of the students towards their preparation? Because, of course, it's a difficult time as in the sense that they have lesser amount of time and larger amount of content to cover. So, what should be the mindset of an ideal student at this point in time?
See, I think the strategy should be like if we calculate the time from now till the exam, so it is roughly 9 weeks to go.
Right.
So in these 9 weeks, of course, there are going to be some festivals, and some of the students might be thinking that Diwali, the Shara, and all these festivities are going to be there. But I would just tell them one thing, that Diwali and all other festivals you'll get every year. But this festival of the festival of this exam, you will get only once in your lifetime. So once you clear this, of course, you are going to cherish the festivals that are celebrated in the NLUs for the next 5 years. So go with that mindset. Do not consider that, this is all the festive season and everything. Devote each and every hour of your waking time to the preparation of the exam. So, of course, it is doable. And I think the overall outlook, if I paint, of course, other subjects are also to be kept in mind. But if I talk about GK, I think dedicatedly and with full concentration, if 2 to 3 hours of every day is devoted to GK for the next 2 months, then of course it can make a huge difference to the scores of to the final score in this exam. So 2 to 3 hours every day for the next 60 days. I'm in anywhere between 130 to 150 hours with full concentration if someone devotes to this exam for GK section. Of course, it is doable.
Right. So I'll also pay attention to the comment section. So we have a comment from Parth. He's asking, sir, how to prepare GK for CLAT 25. That means for the next year.
Right. So I think in that particular query, there is no problem of time. There is no time constraint. So of
Right.
course, it's like very easy to go. But of course, since it's a competitive exam, the sooner the better. So if someone is going to appear next year, December, then one should start right away and should start following current affairs for a start. So
Right.
reading a big newspaper on a daily basis is something that can make a lot of difference in the long term. This would be my suggestion to them. As far as GK and legal reasoning sections are concerned, reading is going to make a lot of difference. But of course, for quantitative and reasoning sections, practice is going to be the key. So this is something that they should start with.
Right, right. So you mentioned about reading newspapers here. So this made me realize a very common query that usually students have is about memorizing the content, because of course, like you mentioned, that we have current affairs coming from an entire year, means 12 months. Every day we have so much of content coming in from the focus of current affairs. So how, according to you, can a student memorize so much of content? Like, what should be an ideal way to do it? Should they make notes, or how should they go ahead with it?
Yes, of course. So here again, it is like there is a lot of content, but how to consume that content. Now, there are two things here. One is, if you have already been in touch with current affairs for the last few months, then it is more about revising it again and again. But of course, if you are starting your preparation now, which is a dangerous proposition, but of course does not make it impossible to clear the exam. In that case, it requires a lot of extra effort from the student side. Now, that extra effort, as far as GK is concerned, is number one in identifying the most important areas. Because if you do not work smart, it is not going to happen. So it's like you start reading the current affairs for the entire year, there are going to be thousands of issues. So it's not going to be a good result. So first is to shortlist the areas which are most likely to be asked in the exam. For that, previous year papers can be really handy. For that, the syllabus that the NLUs have provided, but they have like simply said current affairs and GK, so that's not really very helpful. Previous year papers are really helpful. Then any reputed institutions, mock tests are going to be really helpful, just like ours are. So we have our mock tests in which we have tried to cover an entire year's current affairs. So let us say someone does not have any other way or any other means of studying something. So just attempting these 40 tests is going to make him or her practice about 1200 questions of GK, like 30 questions per test and 40 tests. That effectively also covers entire year's current affairs.
Right.
That is something that can be done.
Right, right. I think that is a very, practical approach towards the preparation. And if a student has an open mind, they can go ahead with it. There should not be any problem, right? Okay, so we have another question. Manav is asking, sir, how to prepare for GK 2025. So sir has already discussed about it just a while ago. They can refer to that. Apart from that, Parth is saying, sir, why students not obtain good marks in GK?
Okay. Right. I get this question a lot. And this is true that students are not usually, see, you won't find students in CLAT who are scoring okayish marks in GK section. Most of the students I have come across, they're either scoring really well in GK or they are scoring really low in GK. So this difference is because of one simple reason, or let us say two reasons. So if any of those, you fall into any of those two categories, you're going to score really high. One is if you are really into reading. So if you are someone who likes to read, which is a habit, I think that is about to go extinct. I think this is the last generation that has a hobby of reading just for the sake of reading. So if you are one of those species that is going to go extinct and you happen to read a lot, so congratulations, you can score really well in the CLAT. See, before you start preparing for any exam, the first thing you should ask is, why is the pattern of the exam the way it is? We never question that. We just see that this is the pattern of the exam. These are the sections to be prepared, and we just start preparing. If we just go behind the eyeballs of the examiner, we will realize that why is the exam framed in a way that is framed. So see, CLAT is an exam that is going to get you into the top law colleges of India. What are you going to do once you complete your law degree? You're either going to become a judge, or you're going to become a lawyer, or a teacher in law, or a jurist, or maybe working in a law firm. All these fields require you to read and write a lot. Right. for lengthy hours for years and years. So unless you cultivate the reading habit beforehand, that is why CLAT exam is designed this way, that it has passages followed by questions in so many sections. So it is not essentially a knowledge test. It is essentially a reading test.
Right.
I've seen students who are not even able to complete the question paper reading in the allotted time. Maybe that's why they have reduced the questions from 150 to 120. Right? So if you are a good reader, number one, you're going to be really good in GK. If you are not, you're going to struggle. Then the second thing why students don't score well in GK, if you are inconsistent with GK, you lose touch. So it's like a friction pole. That I think is true for other subjects also. You are out of practice, you lose the touch. So that is there. So if you are a good reader and if you are consistent, there is no way you will score less in the exam. And these are the two traits that I think a majority of aspirants lack today. They're not good readers and they are not consistent. That's why the score is low in GK.
Right. Very well explained, sir. And any which way it is usually said, anybody who wishes to, like you already defined, who wishes to pursue a career in law, the first hobby or the first skill that you need to have is you need to be a very competent reader, somebody who just does not. And of course, if I refer to the CLAT exam pattern also, all the sections are in the paragraph format. You have huge paragraphs and then you have MCQs. So you any which way need to have a very good comprehending ability to understand which is actually written. And then it's not just for the RCs for the English section, but for the other sections as well. I think you'd agree with me, right?
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. So another thing that I wanted to ask you, let's presume there is somebody who's preparing for the CLAT exam also, is preparing for the ALAT exam also. So is there any distinct difference in the current affairs in the GK section for both of these exams, or are you if you're preparing for one exam, you can appear for the other one also? How does it work?
Right. See, ideally, these are not watertight compartments. So there is a lot of overlap. There is no doubt about it. But having said that, there is 10 to 20% of wiggle room, which is separate for CLAT, separate for ALET. Now, how is that? In CLAT, you require a lot of depth in a selected number of topics. Okay. So let us say, let's say in the last 1 month, if I have to identify any such 3 or 4 topics, there would be, let's say, the G20 summit, it would be the ASEAN summit, it would be the Chandrayaan-3 launch, or it would be, let's say, India winning medals in the Asian Games. So these would be 3-4 major topics that I will pick in the last 15-20 days. Right. But if you ask me in the same period of time, what are the topics I'll be picking for ALET, then I'll give you like a 50 topics, but they are to be prepared in a very shallow way, right? Like one-liners. So the major difference is this. So in CLAT, you need to be very selective with the topics, but once you have selected the topic, you need to go very deep. So let's say I have selected G20. I need to know everything about G20. But in ALET, you select a lot of topics, but do not go deep. So this approach, it should be a harmony of both of these approaches for 15 to 20% of it. Otherwise, it's going to be the same. Right. Now, when you said that, it reminded me of another thing. So as we know that current affairs or GK for that matter is of 2 types. We have current GK and then we have static GK. So a lot of times students are a little confused as to how to they prepare for both of them, because current GK is changing every day. It's the current affairs that you're getting. Static GK is factual, the things that are constant, the things that are part of history or maybe that are happening every day, but they'll stay constant for a very long period of time. So is it possible that a student can prepare for both of these aspects, both of these kind of GKs in a single go? Is there a way that they can do it? Interestingly, this is the only way to do it. Yeah. Right. So I'd say one of the most appreciated changes in the exam taking thing for the last few years is that now current GK and static GK are not 2 separate compartments that a student has to prepare. Otherwise, you remember, the times when I used to prepare like about 8 to 10 years back, we used to have separate books for history, geography, polity, economy, etc., which we used to do from cover to cover. And then there was a separate newspaper or a magazine that we used to read, and there was no correlation.
Right.
Now that is no longer the case, which is really welcome change. Now let's say I just mentioned G20 to you.
Mm-hmm.
So let us say now how this topic is to be prepared. So G20 summit is to be prepared in two different dimensions. One is the current aspect of G20, and second is the static aspect of again G20.
Right.
So the current aspect would be, where is the G20 summit being held? So New Delhi. What is the theme of this year's summit? Then who all leaders participated in it? All the heads of state and everything, and all other current affairs, like what was the outcome of the summit? 3-4 pointers. Now this is one dimension. This is the current part of G20. Now the same G20 you go into the static part. Now what is G20? In which year it was established? Where are its headquarters? The things that are not going to change. Right? So in which year it was established? How many member states are there? Why did it come into being? So if these two things are combined together and are prepared together, that is how current and static is to be prepared, rather than picking up a particular subject and then like going cover to cover. Whatever is in the current affairs, its contextual static part is to be prepared. That is the way to prepare.
But basically goes simultaneously hand in hand, both of these aspects, right?
Absolutely.
Right. Okay, so now that you mentioned a couple of current topics from the past month, what I'm curious to know about is we are almost in October, September is almost over. So if I talk from January to October, according to you, what are those certain topics that students should keep in mind from the exam point of view, those essential topics according to you?
If I categorize those topics into certain categories, that would be, I think, more appropriate. Otherwise, to my calculation, every month there are approximately 8 to 10 topics which are absolutely unavoidable. So that gives us at the end of the year 100 plus topics which are to be covered. But if I categorize those topics, then I think the top category would be international relations and organizations. This is one topic that, due to some reason, the consortium of NLUs has been asking a lot of questions from. In fact, the CLAT exams of 2019, 20, 21, these 2-3 years, 70 to 80% of the weightage of the CLAT exam in GK was from international relations and organizations.
Okay.
So I think, but this is wrong. No, it should not be that way. So it should be a balance of different topics. So for the last couple of times, like last year, CLAT was held 2 times. So they have done some course correction. Now you'll get topics, of course, like international relations and organizations is one. Then you get a topic from polity or constitution. Although that also somehow gets covered in the legal reasoning section, but here you are asked like lighter questions from that.
Right.
Then the sports, they have a habit of asking a passage from sports. Then you get a topic from science and technology. 1 or 2 passages are from science and technology. Just like I mentioned, let's say Chandrayaan 3, or like this year, ChatGPT has been a lot in news. They might ask a question on a passage on artificial intelligence or robotics or something. So these are 3-4 areas, I think, which are absolutely international, sports. Then you have politics and governance, and science and technology. Other than that, some offbeat topics can also be asked. Like in the last CLAT, there was a passage on NAS Daily. NAS Daily is one of the most followed channels on YouTube. So there was some controversy related to that, and they asked a passage on that. So apart from all these topics, to keep an eye on controversies is something that is really important. Like, for example, the Manipur controversy this year, or the communal riots in Haryana, or let's say the India-Canada controversy. The controversy is something that one should keep an eye
on. Right. So I feel that it would be very, very much helpful for the students. So I hope all of you are making notes of these topics, and I hope that you'll prepare really well from these topics that sir has just mentioned. Okay, so we have another query from Jitanshu. No, not Jitanshu, Manav. I think he's our student. He says, "Sir, our class of GK held weekly in Hitbullseye. So, how to cover up two PDFs, whether to make notes of those PDFs." He's referring to the post
Uh,
class material. So, how should
right.
he go about it?
See, in our class material, the two PDFs that we provide, they are designed in such a way that there is no need to make notes, first of all, because we believe that
Mm-hmm.
it wastes a lot of time. But of course, if you're the kind of
Mm-hmm.
person who remembers as he writes, then go for it. Otherwise, the material
Mm-hmm.
is designed in such a way, there are bold characters and some of them are highlighted also. The idea is that you use it as note itself, because that material then of an entire month compiles itself into a monthly magazine, so that it is holistic in nature.
Right.
You're attending weekly classes, and at the end of the month you get all the 4 weeks material compiled in a single magazine. The idea
Mm-hmm.
is that you need not make notes.
Okay.
So that's your personal choice, but the material of course does not demand you to do that.
Right. 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 So, I hope that's helpful for you, Manav. Okay, so now, so what I have commonly seen students doing, whether they are taking coaching from somewhere or they are doing self preparation, is that they tend to refer to multiple sources of information. If I talk specifically for the GK or the current affairs section, so they might as well refer to the newspaper, they'll refer to some app also, they'll be watching some YouTube videos also, and so on and so forth. So, my question here is, do you think there is a disadvantage of referring to multiple sources of information when preparing for the GK and the current affairs section first? And second is, if not that, then according to you, what are those reliable sources that a student can refer to on a generic basis?
Okay, I have a very interesting answer to that, and it is that I can tell you multiple ways of how to succeed at this exam. But if I have to tell you one way for if you want to be really sure that you will fail at this exam, it is that you refer to multiple sources, because the exam does not allow you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest problem in GK is that we feel underconfident. Let's say we have
Mm-hmm.
referred to one good source.
Mm-hmm.
Once we have read the entire source, then we might feel that I need something else, but without checking whether the retention is optimum or not.
Mm-hmm.
And retention is the most difficult part. So for retention, you need to again revise the same material, which is boring,
Mm-hmm.
but that is the right way. Boring is the right way. Reading
Right.
multiple sources may be exciting. You might be feeling, okay, I'm reading the Hindu also, I'm reading the Indian Express also, I'm reading Tribune also. You might feel
Mm-hmm.
very good, but it won't take you anywhere. On the other hand, you
Right.
need to read one source properly, revise it again and again. You may not feel good, but you are moving in the right direction. So it's actually a two-edged sword, so you need to choose. uh, and of course, reading one source multiple times is the only solution if you're actually looking to crack this exam. Again,
Right.
talking about the sources, I think it is best though that you have a compiled material, because when you take compiled material, it saves a lot of your effort and time and
Absolutely.
energy, which you should of course devote to the preparation. So, like for example, Hitbullseye provides you with that kind of compiled material, which is based on previous years' question papers, the trends, and of course with practice questions also. But if you are
Mm-hmm.
preparing on your own and you want me to tell you some material, then I will tell you. But it works in the long term. So it's with a rider. It's not like you start reading that now and it's going to help you in the December exam. But of course, if you're preparing for the next year's exam, then it is going to help you. That is the Indian Express and the
Mm-hmm.
Hindu also have a specific feature called explained.
Okay.
So there is a feature called Indian Express Explained, and there is a feature called the Hindu Explained. This is just one set of articles that these two newspapers publish. If you can follow
Mm-hmm.
either of them, I would still recommend Indian Express Explained. So 4 to 5 articles every day. If you keep reading, it's going to
Mm-hmm.
make a lot of difference.
Right. And I think that will also help inculcate a habit of reading as well when you're reading an article regularly, right?
Absolutely right.
Okay, sir. So now that we are 2 months away, almost 2 months away from the exam, at this point in time, at this stage, according to you, since you've been catering students for such a long time, what are the certain mistakes, common mistakes that students generally commit in their preparation? Of course, we tell them refer to this material, do it this way, do it that way, appear for mocks, and so on and so forth. But still, from a student's point of view, what are those certain mistakes or that they usually commit at this point in time in their preparation?
Right. The most important mistake is not taking the mock tests.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it feels good that you keep reading and reading and reading only without testing yourself. It feels like you're learning a lot, but once you
Mm-hmm.
start to test yourself, you realize where you stand. And tests should not be taken in a way that the scores are defining you. No, consider of a test as something. Let's say I'm taking a mock test for GK.
Mm-hmm.
So I attempt 30 questions in that mock test of GK. Now
Mm-hmm.
I get 10 questions correct and 20 questions incorrect. Let's say I answer all the questions. My mindset should be that I have learned 20 new things today.
Mm-hmm.
If that is the mindset, if the mindset is not that I start judging myself on the basis of the marks that I'm getting, that okay, 10 questions correct, 20 incorrect. So after negative marking, I'm getting, let's say, out of 30, I'm getting, let's say, 5 marks. This should not be the mindset. The mindset should be that, okay, I knew 10 answers, but I have learned 20 new answers today. So mock test should be seen as notes at this point in time.
Right.
This should not
Right.
deter you from taking tests. So if a
Mm-hmm.
someone is not taking test from this point till the exam, that is the biggest mistake that students commit. They think that first we'll complete the syllabus, we'll read everything that we have,
Mm-hmm.
and then we will take the test. No.
Right.
Ideally, from now, every alternate day, students should take tests. So let's say there are 30 tests and there are 60 days. Every alternate day, there should be a test followed by a rigorous analysis of that. By that
Right.
alone, you'll end up remembering thousands of facts which are tailor-made for the exam. And that is where test series comes into picture. So no matter if you're preparing from an institute or you're preparing on your own, a test series specifically dedicated to this exam is absolutely must. I'm not saying only of Hitbullseye, of any good institution, but taking tests is absolutely important. This is the biggest mistake the students make now. And
Right.
second mistake, of course, is referring to multiple sources. Both of them I
Mm-hmm.
would not recommend.
Right. 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 So stick to resources and start taking mocks is what we want students to do at this point. So, sir, ideally speaking, let's presume that we have somebody appearing for CLAT next year in 25. They have an entire, more than a year for preparation. So, what should be an ideal time of start taking mocks? Should it be 6 months before the exam, 3 months before the exam? What is the ideal time?
Right. So my thinking is that before starting the preparation, one mock should be taken. It's an unpopular opinion, I know, but even before you have started the APC of the exam, take
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
one mock exam. Test all your sections. That is in a way your PK test. You know, in education nomenclature, they call it the previous knowledge test. So one mock devote to, that will set a benchmark for you that before starting the preparation, let us say I was scoring 40 marks out of 120. So this is where
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting from.
Mm-hmm.
So first mock before starting the preparation, like day one, take a mock. Okay. And then you start. Then let's say you're appearing next year and you should know the total number of tests that you have throughout the year. Let us say it is 40. So if we talk from the Hitbullseye perspective, let's say there are 40 tests you have to take in the entire year. And there are 52 weeks in the entire year. So it should be intermittently placed in a way that initially in a month, you need to take 2 to 3 tests, not more than that.
Right.
So by, let us say, August, you'll end up taking 15 to 20 tests.
Mm-hmm.
Then increase the frequency. So as you go closer to the exam, the frequency should increase in a way that in the last couple of months, let's say, you should be taking at least 10 to 12 mocks.
Right.
So
Right.
increasing the frequency as you go closer to the exam and taking one mock test before starting your preparation. This is how it should be.
Right, right. So I hope the 25 aspirants are listening to it, and I hope you follow it the same way. So we have Parth. I presume he's asking from September magazine. We start GK for 2020. This is basically trying to ask that for 2025, the September magazine he should begin from the preparation this year, right?
As I said, if you're preparing in the long term, the sooner the better. So, of course, if you have become aware and you have decided now that you're going to appear next year, the start now. Like whenever you decide to appear in the exam, just start preparing. That's a thumb rule for competitive exam. It's not like what is the ideal time to start preparing. Whenever you make up your mind, from that moment is the ideal time. So if you have decided now, start reading current affairs now onwards. It's going to help you.
Right, right. So, sir, I feel there are multiple factors that make CLAT a difficult exam, right? Two of those factors are, of course, negative marking and then time management. We know that there is no sectional timing in the exam. We have 5 sections for the CLAT exam, but there's no sectional timing. You've been given an overall time, and you're supposed to utilize that time very efficiently for each of these sections. And I presume somewhere that becomes challenging for you to understand कि ठीक है मुझे इस section में इतना time लगाना है, इस section में इतना time लगाना है. And then of course you need to be really sure as to the kind of questions you're attempting and the questions you're leaving because there's negative marking. So what should be the strategy to cope up with these two difficulties related to the exam?
Right. So I think one of the least addressed portions of exam prep. Here, now again, I'll refer to my previous answer. If you keep taking regular mocks, that will teach you more about time management than anything else. So there is no common strategy that I can recommend. For every candidate needs to understand that while taking mocks, they need to identify what are their strong areas, what are their weak areas, and number 3, what are the areas that if they work upon, it improves. For every candidate, it is different. Like when I used to prepare for these exams, for me, GK used to be my strongest area. Then second was English. So I always used to know, like self-awareness is the key here. And how will you get that self-awareness? By taking tests. You will learn time management from them. So every student, his or her own strategy based on the mock tests. That is one. So in your strong areas, you can save time and you can devote the extra time to your weak areas. This is a blessing if there is no sectional timing in an exam. So you can, of course, devote the extra time to the areas that you are less proficient with. Now, talking about negative marking, how to tackle that. That again, somewhere mock tests play a role. Because you take the tests and then you analyze it. And what is the analysis about? Let's say you took a guess in a GK question. Then there are 4 options. You were confused between the 2. And you took a call. Let's say you're confused between A and B. So you chose A. Now in the analysis, you got to know that was the wrong answer and B was the correct answer. So the analysis here is that the student in his mindset goes back into the mindset when he was attempting the test and gets down to the reasoning why he chose A over B, where B was the correct answer. So once he realizes the logic behind that, maybe the source he was referring to was wrong, maybe he had not revised it well, then he addresses that root cause that maybe he was not revising it enough. So he starts revising. So I think this is based on, again, it varies from student to student. So this approach would have evolved from the analysis of the mock tests.
Right.
How can you increase your accuracy in the exam? By revising more and by analyzing the mock tests properly. Both the things will come incidentally by attempting more and more mock tests. Your time management as well as how to tackle negative marking.
Right, right. So, sir, we are almost towards the end of the session. A very important question that I feel will be essential for the students from the exam point of view is, if you look at the pattern of the CLAT exams, let's say from the past 2 years, 3 years, what has been the difficulty level for this particular section? I mean, I understand the difficulty level can be different for different people because it varies, right? But on a generic way, what has been the difficulty level of the CLAT exam and what should students expect this year?
Uh, it's very difficult to say though, but if I give you a general answer, that would be moderate. And I'm not being diplomatic here. It is actually moderate. The questions are a mix of easy as well as difficult. That overall gives the section. I cannot authoritatively speak about the other sections of GK, but for the GK section, the level of difficulty is moderate. And so how is this section actually asks you questions? Let's say there's a passage on a particular topic. Again, let's say G20. So there's a passage on G20. So they ask you, let's say, 10 questions based on that passage. Now, out of these 10 questions, 2 to 3 questions are such that anyone can answer. Anyone. They are so easy. Like, for example, they will ask you that in G20, what is the meaning of G? So everyone knows it's the group of 20. Then they might ask you in which year it was formed. Then, of course, it is expected that you would know that. Then 3-4 questions are such which you can answer if you have followed that current affair religiously. Let's say they may ask you, where is the next year's G20 going to be held? So you would know the answer if you have followed the current affairs. You will not know the answer if you have not followed it. So it's like the harder you work, the more answers you would know in that category. This is the category I ask the students to focus on because this is where the most growth lies. Then there are 1 or 2 questions that no one can answer. No matter how much you have prepared for G20 and everything, you cannot answer that. They may ask you who was let's say they may give you 5 countries and they ask you to arrange these 5 countries in order of their presidency of G20.
Right.
Now, this is something no person in his or sane mind is expected to know, right?
Right.
No one knows that. Let's say in the last 25 years, these are the, let's say, 20 countries that have hosted. And out of these 5 countries, arrange them in a chronological sequence. So they do not want you to answer that question. That is to retain the competitive nature of the exam. So ideally, you should be able to answer or you should be prepared for 80 to 85 or 80 to 90% of the questions. So out of, let's say, 30, if you can tackle 25, 26 questions, that is a really good thing. And if you can score above 20, that's also good. So in a way, it's a moderate exam. You cannot think about scoring 100 out of 100 in the GK section, and nor you should be like that it's a very difficult section. It's actually a moderate section.
Right, right. I hope that will be very helpful for the students. I'll take up the last question from the comment section, then we'll wrap the session. So we have Devendra asking how to remember current affairs for long time.
Right. This question has an answer in itself. So if you're preparing for long enough, then you need not put in any effort. Believe you me. Let us say I'll give you a very practical example. Let's say you start preparing for the next year's CLAT exam now. So if you have started from, let's say, September magazine, you would read everything about G20. Right? G20 happened in India next year, Brazil mein honi hai, everything about it. Now, next year again, G20 will be held. That will be a revision for you.
Right.
Right. So again, all those things will get repeated, and in between, you will take a couple of mocks where you will get passages on G20. If you are preparing for a long term, things tend to repeat themselves again and again in GK. We think that every day is a new day, which it is, but every day also repeats a lot of stuff from the previous days. So in the long term, provided you are consistent, preparing for long term has its own rewards, which includes automatic memorization of things by sheer repetition. So that is, I think, my answer.
All right. So thank you so much, sir, for your valuable time. I hope this session proves to be really fruitful for all those students who are appearing for the exam this year or are planning to appear next year. Right? Thank you so much for your time. And any last words, sir?
Thank you so much, ma'am. I would just say that focus and taking tests from now onwards is something that can make a lot of difference in the score that students are going to get. So just do not get distracted by multiple sources. Just do not think that without taking tests you can excel in the exam. You might score really good, but at the end of the day it is a competitive exam. If someone else is taking a lot of tests and you are not taking those tests, you do not see. Tests is not only to get you scores. To test is for introspection. You know how you manage time. You know your strong and weak areas. You know how to tackle negative marking. You know how to increase your score. So mock tests give you introspection, and the more you know yourself, the better you're going to prepare, score in the exam. So all the best to all the students. May all of you come out with flying colors. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. And all you students out there, I hope you found this session to be really, really informative. If you liked the session, please press the like button. If you found it informative, share it with your friends and do subscribe to the channel for any upcoming notifications. Thank you so much. Happy weekend and happy Gandhi Jayanti. We have an off on Monday. Thank you so much. Bye.